Hello and good morning. Let me just flick through. So obviously, the last couple of days I've been going through some incidents that have happened. I've looked at some of mine. I've looked at some more generically. I looked at I think just 1 year's worth of the ones at the BMC across the board. Um, I kind of, when I was looking into that, I realised that it might be interesting to look specifically at just the indoor climbing incidents. And so I'm not saying this is a complete statistical analysis. This is me going through, doing some counts, doing some some what I would call eyeball statistics. That it'd be great to actually get some of these, and I might even contact the Association of British Climbers to see whether they've got a better data set. So if I just go into, I think that one, so you could sort it by this. So I sorted it by indoor climbing incidents. I found 32 incidents. Of those 32 incidents, 62% or 20 of them were attributable. Attributable. Just throw that out there really quickly. Attributable. They're attributed to belay errors. Now, if you remember, we talked about. Let me just. I just Control T. Heinrichs ratio. There we go. Yes, if we remember this sort of triangle where it was like for 300 near misses, we have 29 major accidents and one major incident. When I went through those 20, there, let me work this out, 16, because I didn't count them, I only counted up the minor and major ones. So 16 of them essentially had no injuries involved with them. So that's like our near misses. 3 of them had minor injuries, and 1 of them was a serious injury. So instantly I'd be like, just eyeballing that, you're like, well, actually, that's kind of sort of like obeying the laws of averages and stuff like that, and it's fitting that Heinrichs ratio. So the next thing I kind of did was go through the ones that are attributed as a belay error and try and find out what some of the issues were. Now, there were at least, so again, it's quite hard, but I like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Roughly 13 had some element in them of equipment misuse, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail. 6 included somebody being dropped with a normal belay device, so an ATC, a DMM pivot, or any kind of just normal belay device. 2 were of being dropped with a gree-gree, or sorry, a gree-gree or a assisted braking device. In some of these things, it does say the gree-gree is an auto-locking device. These things are never auto-locking devices, they are assisted. At least 3 came down to communication errors. And then 1 was a COVID face mask thing. I don't remember when we were wearing face masks. He's gone to look down and he couldn't see what he was doing. Nothing happened with that one. And 1 auto belay accident. So for me, it's interesting that being dropped, I could almost put every single one of them into an equipment misuse. And the way I kind of decided to have equipment misuse was that if somebody basically let go of the dead rope, they've misused a normal belay device. If they let go of that rope with a gree-gree, they've essentially misused that device. So pretty much everything can come down to equipment misuse. But what's really interesting is there's a lot more devil in the detail. So the Gree ones were actually that one that I talked of yesterday. It was really interesting, where you have a light person climbing and somebody heavy, and you use an Om and a Gree, and the friction that the Om produces is such that the Gree never locks up. But again, there's an argument that you should be holding on to the dead rope anyway with a Gree and not using it as an automatic thing. Another one was somebody used like a boa, like a really big HMS carabiner with a Gree, and the Gree flipped inside, and the cam that does the locking on the Gree. Hang on, I'll go grab one. Must have one somewhere. It says, might be in the car. So it's in the car on my harness. The cam got jammed up inside the thing. So again, this is another really helpful thing. Don't use Grees with big carabiners. There was another issue of somebody thumbing a Gree, which is people used to put their thumb on it to pay out slack, and basically never have their hand on the dead rope. Again, this has been something that is being bred out of climbers nowadays. There were a couple of Z clips, so the leader went up and they clipped from below the last bolt, and it effectively means that although you're maybe at like the third bolt, you're actually clipped into the third bolt. And in both of those, both the belayer and the climber were unaware of it because they were inexperienced. The other misuse, belaying errors, were somebody hired a harness to use the auto belay, and they were found clipped into the gear loop at the back of the harness. One belaying error was somebody was using a Camp Druid as a belay device, and they didn't have their hand on the dead rope because it's got a trigger on it. When the person looked into this, they were like, well, this is actually an abseil device used for sort of IRATA stuff and rope access. So they were using a descender as a belay device. There have been issues with some of these incidents where a climber was dropped, but the roots on the wall kind of weaved, and the person was briefly underneath that person, and they just got out from being below the person as the person on top rope was dropped past them. And so this is stuff like it's stuff that not us as climbers or instructors, but that's more like a route setting kind of climbing wall management issue. There's at least one which was the person not clipped into an auto belay, which one of the things that astounded me is they fell at 8 meters, suspected broken back, but in this incident they actually didn't. It was like soft tissue injuries. Now, most climbing walls have that foam matting. That foam matting has an ISO standard. It's been designed so it originally was used in like Kiddies Place Park, and the idea is a baby can fall from a certain height onto it and they shouldn't injure themselves. So having that sort of flooring below climbing is actually obviously probably saved that person a lot of things. Other incidents occurred, injuries, which was like people doing full practice, and somebody did full practice on a slab, smashed in, broke their ankle. Again, it's about for instructors and people, we should be assessing where we're having people do full practice before we get them to do it. There were at least three of the incidents had a communication error, one or a distraction. So somebody's walked into the gym and the person's fallen off. some of that communication error was people doing like a clip drop or deciding to take a actual lead fall at the top of the wall rather than clip the layer off for practice, but having not communicated that with the B layer, so they've caught the B layer off guard. Now, obviously, if the B layer was doing everything correctly, the chance that then that shouldn't be an issue. But again, if you are going to do like clip dropping, which is climbing up, you get to the layer off, but you don't clip it and you instantly drop. You need to pre-warn the person that that's going to do. Another incident occurred because the B layer was stood way out from the wall, so the rope kind of went, if this is the wall, kind of went from them in and then up. And effectively what happens is that rope goes slightly up but a lot into the wall, so the vector force of the person falling down is you getting pulled in and slightly up. Now, if you sit back and down, you can kind of, that's how you resist it. But as soon as you kind of get pulled in, you come over your feet and you go up, and then you've got less force pushing down, so you're instantly like whipped into the wall. And this is a major issue with a lot of big walls with steep stuff, and even like on steep, I've seen it a lot at places like Oleana and big places like that, and you almost need to kind of like belay with your, at times like belay with your back to your wall and you're looking up and out. There was one where again nothing happened, but somebody was lowering somebody and they got halfway through and there was a knot in the rope, and rather than ask for anybody in the wall to help them, obviously there's the embarrassment factor. The person tried to sort it out themselves, and then somebody said, just come down, I'll sort it out for you. So a bystander. And so what I found quite interesting when I looked at this is, 62% of the accidents were all to do with like belay errors, with a majority of it being equipment misuse. Now, sometimes that was using an ATC incorrectly. Sometimes it was using a gree incorrectly. There was a couple of instances where it was like the person was using a gree but didn't really know how to use it that well, and so that was resulted in it. And again, communication. So I think it's, for me, a lot of this is therefore you can kind of say that, if you're misusing equipment, actually finding out how to use the equipment is very important. And I know a lot of climber walls now, they require you to have, sign in, and if you're not a proficient climber, you then have to do a course. Walls are much more proactive with what they call floor walking. So, the people that work at the wall have to patrol the floor to make sure people aren't sort of messing about. And yeah, and I just, very quick stream today just on, what are the key factors in like indoor climbing incidents. And, you can look at this and find, multiple causes: belay, complacency, hold rotated, communication, slip, trip, fall. There are a couple of these incidents which, virtually nothing you can do. Like somebody slipped off the holds of the final boulder problem. They're like 3 meters up. They've landed flat on their back. They've gone to the doctor a couple of days later with pain. They've gone again. They've gone for an X-ray and they've had a broken back. They got back to climbing. Another person fell off a bouldering wall and their foot went down between the mat and the wall because they slipped off and they broke their ankle. But yeah, the majority are user errors, of either misusing equipment because you're unaware of how to use it properly, or taking shortcuts. So hopefully that's been of interest to some people. And I will say goodbye for now. I've got to try and get my little cursor back over here so I can stop there.